Hello and welcome to the Courage Coalition. I'm on again today with another wonderful guest. I just think that you guys, as an audience, should count your lucky blessings. That's all I have to say. I bring you the best guests in all of time. Ahaha. But Christina and I met actually through virtual. We haven't met in person. I think we were in the same room at Amberly's event, but I did not meet her. I was introduced to her by another podcast guest, and I am of the thought process, like, if you come to me and say I would love to be on your podcast, then you're in, because you had the courage to come talk to me about it. As a lot of people won't even do the ask, right? So Cristina Simmons is a best-selling author. We just talked about that. But she is a mom first, a devoted wife, a speaker, an occupational therapist rooted in holistic wellness. And that really got my heart too, because we know that I love some therapists. Her journey has been shaped by both profound loss and unwavering love. Christina's story is one of deep resilience, fierce faith, and the quiet strength found in choosing joy after unimaginable hardship. Her greatest mission is to help others see that even in the midst of struggle, there is always a way forward and a life worth rebuilding. Welcome, Cristina.
Thank you, Corey. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. And as we were just discussing before we push record, I read your brand new book, front to back, on our trip to Europe. So thank you for having just this easy to read platform of life, because that's really what the book's about. So Cristina just wrote a book called Eat Your Feelings. Yes, you heard that right. Eat Your Feelings. And it's such an intriguing title, right? And there's this mouth on the cover. Let me see if I can show the guests for that are watching. There's a mouth on the cover. Look at all those. But what caught my eye and what made me really want to read it, besides just supporting another woman, was there is this thing in our world. There is this epidemic in our world where food is an accepted addiction. And I don't think we talk enough about it. And so I had to read your book to see if that's what it was about, right? Which it is, but it's not. Right? And so I love that. So walk with us a little bit in the book. Just kind of, we're looking at like summary of, one, why'd you want to write the book? Why'd you want to share your story? And two, what made you come up with this title?
So I think the answer to both of those questions are God. But let me give you a little backstory. For about 10 years, like, I've just been hearing this whisper of write the book, write the book, write the book. And because I think that in sharing our own struggle and our own story, that's how it helps other people heal through whatever it is that they've been through. And I titled it Eat Your Feelings because not that long ago, I realized that that is what I was doing. I've been through a lot of trauma in my life, and instead of processing that trauma, I was stuffing it down with food. And so I was associating these certain food types, crunchy, warm, mushy, whatever the texture was, with the emotions that I was having. And because I wanted to escape those emotions, I would go to the pantry or to the refrigerator and eat instead of doing that. So that's where the title came from. But yeah, I think I didn't write it before now because I felt like the story wasn't finished. And in the beginning, I talk a lot about my dad, and he did pass away a couple years ago. And so I think that not really gave me permission, but it released me from some guilt of putting some of those things in the book. But those foundations are what shaped me as an adult. And so I felt like I had to put those in there as well.
Yes. And it's funny that you bring that up first, because that's actually the first thing that I highlighted in the book. So I'm a highlighter, an underwriter. I have to come back. I don't memorize things very well. So all my books have all kinds of stuff in it, which I read this beautiful thing. I think Bob Goff wrote it. I'm a huge Bob Goff fan. And he had talked about how if you have a really well-loved book and you loan it to somebody, how they get to read it through the eye of the author, but the eye of the reader when you're a highlighter. And I
Yeah,
thought,
that's
oh,
cool.
my kids and grandkids could totally like read it through my eyes someday. What a beautiful way, right? So it gave me permission to keep highlighting if I needed it. But the first thing that I highlighted was really that section about um, your dad. And so, and I know the reason is that I have a very similar story of forgiving my father, and the power in which I gave myself back the minute I was able to say, "I forgive you. I see you." And I didn't say that again. I'm the same as you. I didn't say this to his face. He was already gone, and that's okay. That's not about me. But we have a choice every day in life to hold on to the traumas, the things that happen to us and let them define us, or release them, or choose something different. And you wrote in here, sorry, 50-year-old eyes, got to put the glasses on. I have story upon story of the verbal abuse and disregard for his family's emotions. And then it says, it is to allow love back into your own heart. Resentment, hate, anger, or whatever form of unforgiveness takes will grow roots and tangles that strangle your heart. And that was so impactful because I think well, I know it's so true that we get to choose to live in what has happened to us or to forgive and move through and into that forgiveness with courage, because it takes courage to forgive, because we're not saying, here, you were right, here's your hall pass. We're just saying we're not going to live in that anymore. So kind of walk with us a little bit about how you got to that place and what it did for you.
I think it was really, I started to see myself through God's eyes when I really started my inward healing journey. And so I started to see my father through God's eyes. And I realized that
Mm-hmm.
he had only done the best that he could with what
Yeah.
he was taught and how he was brought up. And some of us choose to change those patterns, but some people get stuck. And
Yeah.
he had a lot of pride, and he fought all his life to be seen and to be heard. And so it was very hard for him to let other people have an opinion or to let other people speak. And
Yeah.
like I said, I really just, I only forgave him 2 weeks before he passed away. And then that was a struggle because I was really wanting to renew our relationship because he was getting older, and I had now had a different perspective and different eyesight for the whole relationship. And then he passed away, and then I was like, well, now what do I do with that? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I didn't even get a chance to reconcile, which is what I wanted, but I was struggling with how to do it because I knew that he had changed a little bit at that point, but he was 70. How old was he when he passed away? He was 76, I mean, he was in his mid 70s, so at that point, a lot of people don't change. So I knew it
Right.
was going to take a lot of work. And then I didn't get the chance to do it. And I'm glad that I did it when I did, because I think his death would have been a lot harder on me if I hadn't forgiven him before he passed away.
Right. And do you believe that I'm just going to say what I'm thinking right now, that is that was your expectation, is that you were to have more time. But my question is like, or do you believe it was meant that way, that you were meant to forgive him and lose him in a way that taught you something different? Does
Yeah,
that
that's
make
an
sense what I'm
interesting
saying?
question.
Like,
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting
yeah.
question. And the thing is that God had been working on me for a long time to forgive. There were so many
Mhm.
sermons, and I'm an avid reader of the Bible, and there were so many times where passages came up about forgiveness, and it was kind of like this little banter between me and God of like, yeah, yeah, I hear you, but I'm not doing that
Yeah.
because he doesn't deserve it. And you saw the bad things that he did to me, and he's not going to care,
Yeah.
and all the excuses, that I had, because it was really about me being vulnerable. And I
Mhm.
didn't realize it at the time, but I didn't have to say it to his face. I ended up writing him a letter, is what I did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was thinking of reading it to him at some point, but we always think we're going to have more time,
Yep.
and it's just, I think that's just that reminder of, we never know, because his passing was sudden. I mean, he did not take good care of himself, and he was very unhappy for most of his life. And so I'm sure that, and that is probably where I got eating my feelings. I remember him, and I think I write this in the book, about hearing the bowl of ice cream, him beating the bowl of ice cream with a spoon at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And so he always thought that if nobody saw him eat it, then it didn't happen, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so I
Yeah.
think, just, as children, we learn things that subconsciously, you know what I mean? So I think I
Yeah.
picked that up from him, and I was probably a lot more like him than I wanted to admit.
Well, it's interesting you bring up 2 things. The first thing I'm gonna ask you is do you feel like he was the only relationship that you needed to heal, or do you feel like there's more relationships to heal?
I think that his relationship is what I base relationships on, and that was very
Uh-huh.
warped. And so I
Okay.
like, coming into my marriage, I didn't have good communication. I wasn't good with being vulnerable and open, and intimacy was very uncomfortable for me. We weren't like a hugging family. We weren't, you know what I
Okay.
mean? Like, it was kind of an understood that we all loved each other. I knew that my dad loved me, but
Mhm.
we weren't huggy, touchy feely. We were more of sarcasm. Like, we used
Mhm.
sarcasm to
Yeah.
show that we loved each other. And
Yeah.
he used gifts. He would
Okay.
use money or give you things, but then it was always held over your head.
Yeah.
So that was, you know what I
The
mean?
reason
So that
I
was
Yeah. The reason I asked that is that I wonder if that's almost the lesson, right? Is that he whispered to you to forgive, and then this is going to show you what you need to do in the future. I always want to know, like, okay, I forgave and then you took him from me, so what is the real lesson here? It's not about forgiveness. So what is it about? So that I'm just going a little deep there, but that's what I wonder, is like, okay, he's teaching you how to forgive, right? Because you weren't taught how to forgive. He's teaching
right.
you how to forgive because you'll need it in your future. And I love that that's the way our
And,
God works,
and to
right?
do
He
it
he doesn't
quicker.
he doesn't lay it all out in front of you.
Yes. But I think you're right. I think that it was meant to teach me to do it quicker. That,
Yeah.
you turn, what the scripture, that you turn your face 777 times, not just the,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah, if somebody wrongs you, then they need to be forgiven right away. And if they wrong you again, you need to
Yeah,
forgive them again, because, again, it's not for
right.
them, it's for you. It's
It's for
so that your
you.
heart
It's for
doesn't
you. It's
become
not about
hardened.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you bring up a valid point when we talk about generational beliefs, generational cycles, generational values. And you inadvertently brought those up, but I don't believe in inadvertently. I know that they came up for a reason. And so I want to talk about this because you shared that your dad was hiding food from a young age, and you knew it, you could hear it, but it was never talked about. And then you also talked about how you think you're a lot more like your dad than you care to admit some days, right? So, what beliefs or values have you kind of come across as you've done this healing journey, and had to let go of, had to remind yourself, or had to relearn a new truth? That's how I like to talk about it, because it is a truth. Everyone's like, well, it's just a thought. No, it's a truth, because it's something that was instilled in you at a time when your brain was developing. So it's actually a truth. And we just have to learn a new truth. And so talk to us a little bit about some of the new truths you've had to learn as you have conquered eating your feelings.
I think pride is definitely one of them. And but that goes back to vulnerability, which is at the
Yeah.
heart of what my dad didn't want to be. He
Yeah.
thought that putting on a big show made him seem strong and confident, but I think that, like you said, the real courage is in showing the inner, the soft part of you,
Yeah.
so that other people feel comfortable to do that as well. And I think that's something that we need to show our kids, which I didn't do very well when they were younger. And but I was living in a fog and in survival mode for most of
Yeah.
my kids' childhood. And that is one thing that I regret, and I can't change it. I mean, I can change the way that we have conversations now.
Yeah.
And I think that dad always knew in his heart of hearts that his opinion was the only one that mattered. That's what he thought. And so I think that's something else that I had to learn, to listen to what other people needed, and that I
Yeah.
didn't have to necessarily agree or make sure that other people were happy in order for me to feel safe. That was a
Yeah.
big thing. I grew up as a perpetual people pleaser. Like, I was always making sure that everybody else was happy, because if dad was happy, then he wasn't yelling. You know, he wasn't yelling at me, he wasn't yelling at my mom, he wasn't yelling at my sisters. And so I think that's where I learned that I had to be happy inside first before
Mhm.
I could help other people to realize what they need and to help them get what they need.
Well, I love that you bring this up about parenting, because here's a hard truth is that none of us do it right the first time or the second time. And we're always constantly, I guess if we are growing as humans, we're constantly learning what we've done maybe not hasn't been the way it should have been done, or the way we think it should have been done, because I don't know that there's a right or wrong. But let's kind of unravel how you've rebuilt or reestablished trust or confidence in your children as they've gotten older, and you guys, and maybe you have or have not, but if you're able to go back and talk about some of the things that maybe that they remember that they have a hard time with, so that you're not repeating those cycles. Because that's what, like, one of the things that I feel so passionate about is that it's just, you do your best until you know better, and then you do better. But so many times we realize we've done something wrong, and we will not be vulnerable enough to do better. But if we continually do better, we're breaking those cycles.
Yeah, one of the things that my daughters now, they're 21, my twin daughters, they have a lot of anxiety. And I think that they came into the world with the anxiety because they are adopted, and their mother was a cocaine addict, and they were in she was in prison for most of their pregnancy. So I think they came into the world with some anxiety, but then they had me as a mom who was so high anxiety, and I had lost children. And so I spent most of their early years thinking that they were going to be taken too. And so I was
Mm,
projecting that anxiety onto them unknowingly. Obviously, I would not have done that on purpose. But now they're dealing with that. They're dealing with social anxiety and feeling accepted, and knowing what their path in life is. And I didn't want them to grow up anxious like I did, because that's the
mm,
main emotion that I remember feeling as a child, is anxiety.
okay.
And I think a lot of times, I mean, I've seen this happen with friends too. I've had other friends that got pregnant as teenagers, and that was like the one thing that they did not want for their daughter. And then their daughter got pregnant as a teenager. You know what I mean? It's like we were kind of repeat
Yeah.
these cycles.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I'm
So
anxiety.
how do you address those conversations with your daughters, that, about anxiety, and without being that, no, this is how you should do it kind of parent, but more just those conversations with an adult in your life that you love with all of your heart, in order to maybe change the cyclical path of what that looks like.
Yeah,
How do
now
you have those conversations? What do you bring
I
up?
try to yeah, I try to talk with them now. If I see them doing something that is anxiety driven, I mean, without call, like, I don't try to call them out on it, but I'll
Mhm.
start to ask them questions. Well, are you nervous? or do you need to know like what the schedule is going to be, or you know what I mean? Like I kind of open up a
Right.
conversation and then sort of point them to what they're doing and why they're doing
Right.
it. Cause that, that's how I learn. Cause my kids eat their feelings too. I've noticed that they
Okay.
always need something crunchy to have with them. They always have a bag of snacks, and it's almost become like a little inside joke that they have, this little snack bag that is sort of like their comfort blanket. And I don't discourage them from taking it, but I just say, I'm going to be with you. We've been to this place before. The people that are going to be there, or if we're going to somewhere where we don't know, maybe we'll look it up on Google and see how the seating's laid out, or we'll look up the menu before we go to a restaurant. Just kind of some of those preface things to calm their nervous system. And I've tried to teach them, like breathing techniques and other calming
Okay.
things. And they do have, now they've got all these clothing, that is sort of weighted. So they have some of those
Yeah.
like hoodies that they can take somewhere if they're doing it. But we just acknowledge it instead of ignoring it, because
Right.
that's what I used to do. I used to
Right.
ignore it. So I think it's healthier to acknowledge and talk about it. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But you
Oh,
know,
right. Yeah. Um, so let's go back a little bit because we kind of skipped a whole bunch because it's just where the conversation has gone. But you talked about being an anxiety ridden parent because you were afraid of losing them. And you share all this in your book. So I'm not gonna go into grades, but I want you to kind of share with us a little bit about the process of finding out that you guys could not carry a child, and how that how that changed you. Obviously we know we don't know, but we feel like we would know the devastation, but like how did it change you? How did it change you as a human, and what do you feel like, I'm not going to say do different because that's not the word at all, but what do you feel like you were learning through that?
so my husband and I were married at 22 and 23. So pretty young, we were still
Mhm.
kids, because now I look at my 21-year-olds and I think they're not ready to be married, in a year or so. Um, but so when I was 25, we got pregnant with our first child, and we learned when I was 6 months pregnant that we carried a very rare gene, and that she was very sick, and that she was not going to live. And so I had to stay pregnant for a month and a half, knowing that she was going to pass away, just waiting for, the time for her to come. And I think that it at that time it confirmed all of those deepest fears of mine, that I did everything wrong. I grew this baby, so it must be my fault.
Mm.
Um,
Oh,
that I wasn't worthy to have a child. That I remember my dad apologizing because there's a passage in the Bible talking about the sins of the father, and he thought that it
oh,
was his
wow.
fault that this was happening to me because of all of the bad things that he had done in his life. And so I took on all the responsibility on myself, and did all those bargaining things with God. I'll take her place. If she can just be healthy, and all of these things, these crazy things that we say when we're going through something like
Right.
that. And it changed my husband and I as a couple, because people
Mhm.
grieve very differently. And his parents, his sister was killed in a car accident when she was 16 and he was 18. And so his parents had already lost a child of their own, and now they were losing a
Mhm.
grandchild. And I felt so guilty about that, because I thought, I'm giving them so much more pain now. They've already been through all of this. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
took all of the responsibility on me. And of course, I realize now that I should not have done that. It made it 1,000 times worse on myself. And my sweet mother-in-law, she's read the book, but it took her a while to get through it, because she had to read a little and cry a lot, and then read a little and cry a lot. But she
Yeah.
told me, she apologized to me, and she said, I didn't have any idea that you were carrying so much weight through all of that. She said, because you wouldn't
Mhm.
talk to anybody. And so
Yeah.
that's another thing. I think we need to communicate. We need to ask for help, and we need to
Right.
tell people that we're hurting.
And have the hard conversations. I think that's especially inside of a family or especially inside of a people pleaser's mind. We believe that if we just don't talk about it, it'll go away.
Mhm.
But the reality is it never goes away. It just festers in ourselves, but also in those around us because they want to help, but they don't know how. Or they don't understand why you're so moody, or they don't understand why you eat so much, or they don't we can go on and on. Why do you blow up? Well, if you don't talk about those things, everyone believes then it's about them. So we're
Yes.
just creating the cycle. We're continuing the cycle, right?
Mhm.
So the hard conversations are really hard and we don't, but it's not our responsibility how someone else takes them. It's just our responsibility to have the conversation about what we feel or need.
Yes. Yeah, I'm starting I started a book club, and our first meeting was last Monday night, and that was one of the things that I said inside there was that we can't take responsibility for others' actions. Because
Right.
my mom has not been able to read the book because it's upsetting to
Okay.
her. Yeah. And I told her though, and this was a way for me to open up this conversation with her, because it's been hard for us to have these conversations, because
Yeah.
she, like, if something really bothers her, she likes to not talk about it. Like
Mm-hmm.
most of us
Right.
do.
Doesn't
Yeah.
we
But
don't
I
talk
told
about it,
her,
doesn't exist, right?
exactly, that's right, it just go away. But I told her, I said, Mom, everything that I put in this book, I said, I have worked through, I have processed. I said, you don't have to take any responsibility for anybody's actions, especially dad's. I said, and you don't need to have any guilt for any of these things to happen. It's not your responsibility to do that. And she's still working through that. So
Yeah.
I'll continue to try to help her to do that. But it is hard. It's very hard.
Right. And it's not your responsibility to do that also at the same time. Remember, it's like you know what, we don't have to take that on. It's like it's her journey and
Right.
it's her need or non-need to want to do that. And we get to, and she gets to allow herself whatever it is, she comes to. And I think that's the hardest thing that we do as humans is we have this expectation, right? Oh, well, if you read this or if you hear what I'm saying, you'll feel better. But that's not for us. It's for them, right?
Yeah.
Like they get to choose how they go next.
We should all over everybody all the time. You should do this and you should do that, and I should go here and I should be there.
Yes.
We're shouldn't all
Yes.
over ourselves all the time. Yeah, because you can. I think the biggest thing, and that was another reason why I wanted to write the book. I think you need to be the example. You need to
Oh,
live your
yes.
life in a way that people see how to heal, and how to do it in a more healthy way. And not that I am perfect by any means, and I've made so many mistakes, but I think that's also important to tell people, because
Right.
they know that it just makes them human. It connects our
Right.
humanness, and
Yeah. Well,
together
and
then we can work through
they're
it.
seeing one version of how to heal. You're just showing them your version, but it's
Right.
it's just saying you have permission, right? You have permission to do it however you see fit. This is just my version. This is how I'm going to do it. And what it does is it gives people permission. It gives them that permission slip to say, okay, well, I kind of like that. I'm going to see what happens if I do that, right? It's just that curiosity that we spark when we show somebody through actions, not words, what something looks like. And so you're right. I mean, I think that's one thing that books in general allow us to do is see somebody else's journey and see somebody else's way of doing something and ask ourselves those tough questions is like, would this work for me? And or am I ready for this? So yeah, I think that's a beautiful way of looking at that.
I think I
So
think one I think one thing that gave me a lot of freedom when I first at first I didn't want to go through counseling. What I actually said out loud was, my baby's died. I know what's wrong with me. I don't need to talk to anybody about it. And then I finally went into counseling, and one of the most freeing things that my counselor said to me was, there's no right or wrong way to grieve.
Yeah.
And that gave
Yeah.
me permission to do it the way that I could do it and
Yeah.
the way that I needed to do it. And so I think that's another important thing for people to hear. There's not any right or wrong way to heal. It's just the way that you
Right.
need to do it.
Yes, absolutely. In your circumstances, in your grief, in your loss, whatever it is, it's however it works for you. Just keep going, keep taking baby steps. So you just said I lost babies. So we talked about your daughter. So continue the story.
So we subsequently had a miscarriage, and then they never discouraged us from getting pregnant again because it's only a 25% chance of a sick baby, 75% chance of a healthy baby. Those are very good odds to me. And I'm kind of the perpetual optimist, and my husband is the perpetual pessimist. And so I wanted to keep trying. We had another baby girl that passed away, had the same syndrome,
Mhm.
and
So
then we
sorry.
adopted the girls that same year. And then 4 years later, we had a baby boy who passed away from the same syndrome. And then
Mm,
just a few months after he passed away, we adopted our son. So everything that was
yeah.
taken from us, God gave back, and I'm grateful for that journey, and I love being an adoption family. I think it's one of the most beautiful things you can witness as the ones adopting or giving the baby or even knowing an adoption family. I mean, I think it's just
Mm.
a beautiful thing to be a part of.
So I want to tear something apart here really quick because I think that some listeners, maybe, and I'm just assuming here, but some listeners are going to struggle with something you just said. We were given back everything that was taken. And I believe that that is that's your God heart that says that. And maybe not everybody is on that same journey. So how can you help listeners, or even just how have you come to be able to believe that by losing three children, which is has got to be, and I'm not saying it is because I don't know, but has got to be some of the biggest grief that life can hand you, and turn that into the positive of giving a home and love to three children who needed a home and love.
I've always said that everything happens for a reason, and I wholeheartedly believe that. I think that comes from my faith, and I don't know how I just, it's so funny now how many times I apologize to God for like, I am so sorry that I yelled at you and that I didn't see the bigger picture and I didn't see the plan. You know what I mean? And I joke with my husband. I've told him often that I think that it's his fault that we had to lose the baby because I don't know that if I had just not been able to get pregnant, if he could have opened his heart to somebody else's child.
Mm,
It was very hard
that's
for
good.
him to do that. And when we started talking about adoption, that was the first thing he said. He said, I don't know if I can love somebody else's kid. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
especially after losing your own and
Right.
feeling that unconditional love and like your heart literally being like torn out of your chest. He just didn't know
Right.
if he could love somebody else, a child that came not from him. And, when you
Right.
get married, you marry that person for their spirit. And, some people marry for physical traits and all those other things, but you marry that person for that person and to procreate with them and their features and their attributes. But I think it's really funny because I often call our one daughter his mini me because they are
Mhm.
so much alike. And our
Yeah.
other daughter is like me. She's, very
Uh-huh.
like me. And so I think it's just perfectly orchestrated, and that's just what we have to remember. It's not our plan. And I know
It's
that's
not our
hard
plan.
pill for
Yeah.
a lot of people to swallow, but miracle after miracle has happened in my life, and I just can't, you know, I
Right.
can't not say that it's true. And I
Right.
feel, you know what I mean? Like I just don't know how other people can make it through this life that is so hard. It's a hard life for everybody. I don't care who you are. Everybody has
Right.
struggles, but I just don't know how they can make it through without knowing that God's going to make it everything okay in the end.
Yeah. Or that there's just a plan. There's something bigger. Everything
Yes.
happens for a reason, as you said before. One of the things you brought up, and I want to talk about this a little bit, because I'm always going to throw in adoption tidbits and stuff like that because I am an adoptive family, and I feel just like you, Christine, is that it is one of the biggest blessings of my life. I am so grateful and blessed to be a biological parent too, and I know that not everybody gets that, but adoption has brought something into our lives that I never knew we needed, and something so much bigger that there's no way, like you said, that it couldn't be for a reason, right? But so our four children all were adopted out of foster care, and with that, there's genetic things that could be a part of that child's life, and so we were fortunate enough to have just this like amazing. I can't even tell you, she needs to have a gold pedestal pediatrician. She was just a rock star. And I remember coming to her with my baby. So our youngest is 6 still. And I said, so this is the diagnosis of mom, and we know nothing about dad. And I just need you to give it to me straight, Amy. What are the chances that she's going to suffer the same mental health that her mom did? And she looked me right in the eye and she says, less than 3%. And I said, what do you mean? How can you say that? And she says, Corey, I'm telling you right now that the future of this child has to do with how she's raised and where she's raised. It has very, very little to do with genetics. And it was one of the most powerful things, is we've all read it. What does it say? I can't even think of it right now, but it's something about genetics versus where you're raised. There's a saying, I'll have to come up with
Nature
it. But
versus nurture.
yes, nature versus nurture. Yes, exactly. And we've heard it, but we just don't put it into reality. And for her to tell me that, I was just like, okay, God, I hear you. Because I do believe that she came to me from God. We were done doing foster care. We were completely out of the system when she was born. So anywho, I have to put that in there. But then I also need to just say, I have to be vulnerable for a minute, because when you talked about how your husband wasn't sure he could love somebody else's children, I remember feeling that. I remember feeling that so deep in my soul about 3 years into realizing that we were not going to have any more children, and how I was just gut wrenchingly mourning that. And a friend came to me who had adopted and said, Corey, why don't you adopt? You guys have such an amazing home to share with our children. And I looked her straight in the eye and I said, I don't think I can. I don't think I can love somebody else's kid. I mean, I said it as black and white as, anything. And when foster care came to us, God knew my heart was ready. And I remember the love I had. And our oldest adopted daughter was not our first child that we did foster care for. So, but the love I had for those two boys, and the grief I had when they moved on, right? And I realized at that point that that is exactly the way it's supposed to feel, because then you're doing it the way the child needs it to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. I always knew that I was going to be a mom. I just
Mhm.
always knew that. I knew I was supposed to be a
Yep.
mom. And so
Yep.
even I always held on to the dream that we were going to have our own biological child. But and it was funny because once I released that, and I released
Mhm.
it twice, I guess, because once when I released it, the girls came, and then I released it again and our son came. But I needed them just as much as they needed us. And they
Yeah.
were supposed to be
Absolutely.
ours, and that was the plan. And
Yep.
I mean, I could have skipped all of the heartache. You know what I mean? I asked God before, why couldn't we just have these children if they were supposed to be ours? But that wasn't the plan. And it doesn't
Right.
make for as good a book either. So, People like a little drama.
Yeah. Well, okay, so you have adopted two girls. So you're a twinsy mom at the top of at the top of it, which is always a hard way to become a mom and engulfed in all the diapers and the feedings and all that. I have twin brothers. So you're a twin mom, and then some years later you adopt a son. And when you adopt your son, um, you get a whole new lesson in life.
I did. I did. He is keeps teaching me lessons, that one. So we didn't realize, like thinking back now, he was such a good baby. Like he was the best baby. But I think it's because he didn't have a lot of emotion. And I even remember like
Mm.
he didn't smile at me like my girls did when they were babies. You know, he didn't coo like other babies did. And I didn't really think about it at the time, but the older he got, the more we started to see these little things. And I couldn't put him in footy pajamas because he would scream. It was like somebody was strangling him or something. He wouldn't wear socks or shoes. He wouldn't wear a jacket that didn't zip because you couldn't put anything like over his head. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then at about 1.5, 2 years old, he started lining things up in a row and he started staring at things spinning for hours on end. And you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
And then he started with the temper tantrums. And so he got kicked out of every daycare we ever took him to. And then when he was 4 and heading into pre-K, they really said, you know, we know that he's not a brat. Like, I mean, they were trying to help us. They
Yeah.
said, we realize he's not a bad kid. We think there's something else going on. You know, have you ever thought about checking into that? And at this point, I didn't have any idea what they were talking about. Autism was not talked about as prevalently as it is
Yeah.
now. But at the age of 4, he was diagnosed with autism, on the autism spectrum. And one of the first things they said that he needed was occupational therapy. I didn't even have any idea what occupational therapy was. So I had no idea what occupational therapy was. So I started to research. I'm a researcher, I'm a nerd. I love to educate and learn all the time, which is why we're entrepreneurs, right? Um,
Yes.
and so I love the whole holisticness of occupational therapy and how they looked at the whole person and
Yeah.
not just the one body part. I always thought that I wanted to be a physical therapist, which is so funny, you know what I mean, that I ended up being an occupational therapist. But um and so I tried to get him into occupational therapy. I tried to get him into a psychologist. I tried to get him into a psychiatrist. I couldn't find anybody in our area. We live kind of in a rural, kind of a small
Mhm.
community. And so you have to drive an hour and a half anywhere, you know, any which way to get to big clinics around here. And so at the age of 39, with young twin daughters and an autistic son, I thought it would be a fantastic idea to go back to school and get a master's degree in occupational therapy because, you know, I didn't have anything else to do in my spare time. My husband thought I was
Yeah.
completely nuts. He was Mr. Mom for years. And then, right before I was supposed to start occupational therapy school, they found a tumor in my femur bone. So that
Mm.
occupational therapy school got put on hold, and I had to have 2 major surgeries to fix my leg. And I started occupational therapy school on a cane. I was still on a cane at the time,
Oh my
but
gosh.
I did. I went through and got my master's degree, and I just recently quit my job, but I was working as a pediatric occupational therapist in the school system, working with
Oh,
children just like my son. And so I've
yeah.
enjoyed doing that over the past 8 years and helping other families. And, you know, I still, because my husband, he's like, so you're just throwing away that whole degree? And I'm like, no, occupational therapy, you can do so many things, you know, as an occupational
Yeah.
therapist. And, you know, it goes right into the holistic wellness coaching. And so, yeah,
Well, and that's gonna roll right and that rolls right into where we're gonna go with this as we wrap this up is so you've written a book and you've decided that instead of just writing a book, you're going to be a publisher because you weren't happy with your experience as a whole picture, that you think that women have so many stories to tell, and you want to help them do that in a safe container. So walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, and it wasn't that I wasn't happy with my publishing journey. I was, but I think that I can offer something that nobody else out there is really offering, and that's true
Yes.
healing through the book writing process. And so I think I
Okay.
can meld my gift as a writer with my clinical background and make
Yeah.
a very safe container for women who come from trauma and want to tell their story, but they're maybe afraid of exactly what to put in the book and what to leave out and
Yeah.
how to say it as to not offend family members, and not, because that was a whole process for me. And
Right.
I know you've read the book, and we can talk about this for just a second, but I was really worried about putting in there that I essentially had an abortion because
Yeah.
we knew the babies were sick, and I was not in a mental state to stay pregnant again. I could not do it. I had done that. I had stayed pregnant for a month and a half with a child that I knew was going to pass away, and it probably would have killed me if I had to stay pregnant
Mhm.
again.
Right.
Um, but I
Yeah.
was very worried about putting that type of thing in the book. And but I think that what we reveal, it takes the shame
Yeah.
away. You know what I mean? And it allows for
Yeah.
us to heal it. And it allowed me to release the guilt that I had for that. And
I
so,
love
yeah,
that.
that's why I want to be a safe space for women
I
who
love
really
that.
want to heal while they tell their story, and their true um, purpose is to help other women. So, yes, I just
Yeah.
officially opened my publishing company. It's called Soul Story Collective,
Oh,
and
I love that. I
yeah,
love that. And, I'm sitting here thinking about your husband's comment, you're just gonna throw that degree away, and I'm thinking, "Nope, she's gonna write an occupational medicine book about being the parent of an autistic child," and I just think about, like, the tools and the gift that you could give in written word to parents who are struggling, right? Not only as an occupational therapist, but as a mother,
yes.
and, I think that one's in I feel like that one's in your future also. So you tell him, "Nope, I'm writing a book, honey."
All right. Yeah, I think I've got several books in me actually. So now I
Yeah,
just use
I
my own
love
publishing
that.
company to do it.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so Christina, tell people where they can find you if they want to know more about you.
I'm all over Instagram, Christina P. Simmons. My website is ChristinaPSimmons.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. So yeah, and pretty soon
Find
I'm
you
working
there.
on the website for the publishing company. So that's coming soon.
Perfect. I will drop her website. I will drop a link to the book on Amazon. You guys go in, check it out. And if you have a book on your heart, I am challenging you to reach out, because you know what? It's funny that this happens, because I think sometimes when you get into somebody's first clients, you actually receive the best of them. I truly believe that, right? Like, they're still forming, but they're giving everything of themselves, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, they just they have so much passion for what they're doing that you get the best of them. So if you have a book on your heart, I challenge you to reach out to Christina. I ask all of our guests before we get off, what does courage mean to you? And you said facing an unimaginable challenge with the knowing that God is with you in every moment is your definition of courage. And so I love that. You talked about that several times throughout our conversation. And again, it is just stepping forth in spite of fear, knowing that there is something more. So, Christina, thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you, Corey.
Okay. Until next time, guests, we will see you again.